When you look beyond the pages of the New Testament to the early church fathers up through the 5th century, so the period that it coincides with the church councils, what you find in the early church fathers is no defense of marriage either. What you find there is a recommendation of an ascetic life, a celibate life, a single life against this backdrop of the church's eschatological expectation, but also in a sense of somehow making the kingdom of God present, even though the second coming may have been delayed, by overturning the expectations of the constriction that comes with family life. So as Elizabeth Clark has pointed out in her magisterial volume called Reading Renunciation, even in the traditions in the Bible which seem to be favorable towards marriage, the early church fathers used those passages as an occasion for recommending the celibate and unmarried single life for the true Christian who would be a kind of spiritual athlete. The rejection of marriage was often described of in very positive terms as freedom from necessity, as a life that is better, one to be preferred. I've mentioned Elizabeth Clark's work. I'm not the only one to be kind of a curmudgeon about this and to remind people about what early Christianity said with respect to marriage. You can find that in the works of Dale Martin at Yale or Marianne Tolbert. You can find that in a fabulous work by Stephanie Kuntz called The Way We Never Were, which deals with the ideas of what constitutes normative family life in the history of Christianity. I even have a recent doctoral student, James Murphy, who's written a book just published, which was his doctoral dissertation, which I supervise, called Kids and Kingdom, the Precarious Presence of Children in the Synoptic Gospels, which focuses on those texts in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, which, if you take seriously what Jesus has to say about the disruptive nature of the inbreaking of the kingdom of God and its effect on family life, what that might have actually meant for children in the Jesus movement. And their place, as Dr. Murphy points out, is tremendously precarious, and their well-being called into question by this eschatological worldview of Jesus's early followers. So that's to talk about the biblical and church historical material, but I want to say a couple of other provocative things as you think about the blessing of same-sex unions this week. And the first is that I think it's high time for the church to get out of the marriage business. If marriage is to be understood as an institution that involves a legal contract. I simply think that that's secular business, and the church has nothing to do with that. That if the state wants to somehow legalize unions, then all unions should be civil unions, whether they're heterosexual unions or gay unions or lesbian unions. The state should engage in civil unions, and the church should have nothing to do with that. What goes on in the church, whether it's called a marriage or a blessing or a commitment ceremony, it should have no legal ramifications or aspects whatsoever. Leave that to the state. If pressed, I would suggest that the state ought to get out of that business as well. I see no reason why the state should somehow provide special privileges to people in unions. I see no reason for the tax laws. I see no reason for providing special sanctions for people who have children. The tax laws that provide for schools and other programs that the state wishes to sponsor can cover those sorts of benefits. I see no reason for the state to be involved in the legal sanctioning of unions whatsoever. But that's probably more my personal point than something that we need to take up in our discussion. The more important point that I wish to make is that the church is not in the legal sanctioning business, but it is in the blessing business, and that the church engages in all sorts of blessings. The very first begins at baptism. The church expects people to make baptismal vows or to have baptismal vows made on their behalf, and the church blesses those who embark upon those vows. The church blesses ordination vows. The church blesses material objects that are used in worship, like candlesticks and altar linens and processional crosses and the like. The church blesses animals on St. Francis Day. The church is in the blessing business. That is an appropriate activity for it to be engaged in. And so it seems to me that the church can be in the business of blessing unions between heterosexual couples who choose and are able to have children. But the church can also be in the business of blessing same-sex unions, whether the partners in those unions hope to have children either by adoption or other means of surrogacy for parenting a child. They can bless those sorts of unions. But it seems to me the church needs to be in the business of blessing life passages of all sorts, and at every phase of the Christian's life. The church needs to be about blessing friendships and taking friendship seriously, because the Bible, both the Hebrew Bible and the New Testament, has a great deal to say about friendships. The church needs to think about blessing other sorts of unions. It might want to think about blessing the commitment between widows who agree to care for one another. It might agree to bless the commitment or union between elderly people who have lived alone all their lives and now need the companionship and benefit of someone else in their life, whether another man or another woman. Again, this does not have to be a legal relationship, a state relationship. It doesn't need to involve wills and all sorts of codicils to wills, but it can be a blessing of a relationship and a commitment of caring for one another. There are all sorts of ways that this discussion about the blessing of same-sex unions can become an opportunity for the church to think about its activity of blessing, to think about its activity of relationships among people. And this discussion about the blessing of same-sex unions could be the basis of a very profitable and I think prophetic way for the church to think about its ministry. Well, I hope I've primed the pump. I hope I've made a lot of you angry, and that you'll have something very interesting and challenging to come back at me with over the course of this next week. I look forward to it.